So I want to see if I can start to tease out what I think is calling these walks and what is called thought and thinking. And kind of what's at stake. And essentially what's at stake, right, in philosophical thinking, right? So one of the things that people often will say about Heidegger is they often talk about, first of all, almost everyone says Heidegger is probably one of the most difficult philosophers ever, if not the most difficult philosopher to understand and to break into. He's incredibly difficult to allow him to think your thoughts, right? Yet they often, in the next breath, will say paradoxically, however, that which Heidegger is talking about, right, on another hand, is very, very simple. And it's funny, I think the more I go into what Heidegger's opened up for me, and I think it was even more than Heidegger, I think it's just thought opened up for me, is really starting to understand what that is. Like what's at stake in genuine thinking, right? And I don't mean thinking, right? I want to really see if I can make the distinction here, because I think, like, a lot of times what we call thinking is not the thinking that I'm trying to point to right now. Usually, I don't mean the wiggly things in your head that are constantly telling you to tighten your rectum until everything gets under control, thus making your rectum and everything else and everybody around you kind of numb with a weird forced smile on your face. Not that. In fact, that's kind of interesting to think about that. But what is that if that's not thinking? I think that's a much longer walk. But I think what that is mostly is the idling of social practices rolling through the culture. And one of the ways it rolls through the culture is it rolls through people's minds, right? Lost in thought, constantly thinking, right? But that's not what I'm meaning by thinking, right? A lot of that is just representing, kind of regurgitating, rolling things over and over and over and over in your mind, right? Now, if we kind of look at this, and this is where we can start to get into it. Now, what is the basis upon which you are idling? What's the basis upon which you're thinking and idling, and all those wigglies going on in your head that are telling you to control all of reality and to pretend like you're having fun while you're doing it, right? And don't let everyone know that you hate everybody, right? Not that. So I want to kind of see if I can start to tease out like a little opening to see if we can like let it flash forth a little bit. Okay, so now if we just look at the most basic thing in the world, right? Your simple being here, being there, right? And so, like, imagine if you're watching the screen, or if you're just watching yourself watch the screen, or whatever you're doing right now, you're seeing a world, right? You're seeing waves. You're hearing sound. You're hearing a voice in the background. And you're seeing colors and hearing sound, and you're touching, tasting, smelling. All of your senses are bringing a perception to you. You're perceiving. both internally and externally, right? Now, another part of the perception, if you kind of look around, is that you also see that what you're perceiving exists, right? Obviously, of course. Because if that wave right there, or that water, or this plant didn't, if you couldn't perceive that it existed, right? Well, then that would just fuck things up, right? Because if you can't perceive that that rock exists, right? The sky exists, right? There's a way that everything exists. It is. The rock is, the voice is, the water is, the sky is, the thought is, including all of the delusions about the rock, sky, earth, water. All those delusions are. However, everything that you can see, you can kind of correlate, for the most part, you can correlate to a sense perception, right? You can sense it. But what about this existence? Now, you perceive that it exists, right? Obviously, you perceive it, because it does. It exists. It's right there, okay? So it's obviously a perception. But how do you perceive it? Do your senses bring it? Do your senses tell you that it exists? I don't think you can find the rock's existence in this, in the color of your eyeballs, or even in the rock. So you definitely see that everything is. But if we try to bring forward that which everything that is partakes of, this is itself, you're perceiving it, but you're not sensing it. Think about that. In fact, the senses are based upon its existence, right? The existence on some level, you could say, is grants anything to be colored, right? Anything upon anything for you to see, hear, taste, touch, perceive, including all of your delusions about it, right? Yet, what is this is? What is this? How do you exactly perceive it if you're not sensing it? Now, on some level, I think we're automatically up to like a presupposition, that kind of a common sense notion, is that there's this sense in which, well, obviously it exists, and I'm just looking at it, but guy, look, stop bothering me, because, look, it just exists, therefore I can see it. But you can't see the existence. Well, you do see the existence, but your senses don't bring you the existence, right? What is this existence? What is this? This is. We try to bring it to the foreground. And if we look at it like this, if you want to kind of get a little contrast here, imagine that, I'm Christopher Columbus, right? And I'm in the, 1500s. And I'm looking out. Or I'm in ancient Greek, right? I'm like 500 BC, and I look out. I still would see things existing. However, would things stand out and be intelligible and present themselves in the same way it did for somebody that much older? Another way of thinking about this, I was thinking about this the other day, of imagine Christopher Columbus actually. You know, when he's a kid, he stands out on the shore and he looks at the horizon where he's going to sail his ship that he doesn't know yet, right? And this is before that he discovers that the earth is actually round. You know, imagine he's a little kid and he's looking out at that horizon. And then he goes and lives his whole life and he discovers the world around, and he's like, you know, I don't know, 80 years old, and he, after all that, and he stands on the same spot, looking at the same view, same time of day, and he looks at that very same horizon. What does he see? That's the way existence discloses itself differently. That is, you could say, the history of being. Starts to get at that. It's what seems self-evident and just factual, right? You just innocently show up and there you are. Just things exist and then you see them. However, yes. But so what we're talking about here is that it's the intelligibility, that it shows up as anything at all, and what grants the as is nothing just given. Yet it occurs just given, and just that occurrence, I don't know if we can think of anything closer to ourselves than the intelligibility by virtue of which we stand on and have everything just occur in its ordinary, average, everydayness. Boom, there you are. It's so close, it's so given, that it hides in its utter uncanniness. Thought, what I'm talking about thinking, is about the basic question of what grants the way the world worlds for you. What grants its hiddenness as a world, its concealment into ordinariness, its hiding in plain sight, it's your ability to fall from it, forget about it. All of it. Thinking, real thinking, is simply about, you could say, trying to catch a glimpse of the very being of our being as it withdraws. In other words, it's the matter, right? It's like, what's at stake? The very intelligibility upon which anything at all shows up for you as anything. That. So that's the thing I just wanted presence about philosophy, right? Because I am not an academic by any stretch of the imagination, right? Like, but if you let these questions, if you let the question of being really touch into you, if it strikes you, you'll never be the same. On some level, it's all you could think about. In fact, it's actually more the case that it becomes more and more that has always already been the case, of that you are the thinking of that, even in your forgetfulness of it. And so what I think I mean by thinking is drawing into and becoming available to be struck by that which is most near. To really listen deeply. And maybe this is another, we can talk about this at another time, but I kind of can't tell really the difference between thinking and listening.